Okay, so if you want to download this, what we're going to start off with is going to be ContactWeb3 2. And I realized I was totally off on how I was generating the random names. I'm not totally sure why I was so off, but in the end, I think when you end up starting with the current seed, which is and we're using the same seed, or where it's based on time, and basically you're generating these things pretty quickly, you're not going to end up with very random results. I'm not positive that that's what the issue was, but I looked on Stack Overflow and I have a much cleaner way to do this. So let me actually just put a little code in here. What I'm going to do is go to my class, which is going to be ContactBus, and I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff. Again, I apologize for that. That was kind of annoying, and I guess if someone wants to figure out why this isn't random, that's fine too. Maybe I'll get a better understanding of this. But what I'm going to do is actually use this method that I ended up getting from Stack Overflow, and let me just clean this up a little bit. So basically, I've got this random number that's actually, I'm getting this from again from a time value. But the thing that's different here, and what I'm going to use here is actually I'm copying this code, which is I'm going to use string builder, which is under system.txt. So in order to generate this random string, we have this variable called character. So string builder is basically just a way of building a string where you're not doing a lot of concatenation. And what's going on here is that, and let me actually move this to the next line too. This is a little bit more the way that numbers end up getting generated in JavaScript. And what's happening here is that you're generating a random number between 0 and 1, right? And it's going to have a lot of decimal places, and you're multiplying that by 26. So what you're going to end up getting is you're going to get a random number. Hopefully it'll be a true random number between 0 and 20, basically between 0 and something a little bit less than 26, right? And so you end up adding 65 to that, and I guess 65 is basically the letter A, and so in the end you're getting this integer value between 65 and 65 plus 26. You then end up that's converted to an integer, and then you're converting it to a character, and then you're adding it to the string. So then, and by the way, I also noticed that the technique that I was using to get a unique email address was also way off. So I was kind of batting 1,000 with that. But let me actually show you this code that that's revised code. Bear with me a second. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to generate my contacts. I'm going to put this inside of this data method, and again, would have been a heck of a lot easier, I think, to just creating a database at this point. But in any event, what I'm going to do here is, and sorry, I know it looks like a lot of code. It's not too bad. And copying this from Notepad, so I'm going to make sure that I turn on word wrapping, and let me just clean this up a little bit, and I'm going to go over it real fast. So what's going on here is that again, if I can't find the contacts in the cache, I'm creating them. I'm creating 500 of them. I'm getting 2 now true random strings, creating my email, and here, just to make sure that I don't have a duplicate email address, what I'm doing here is I'm starting this counter from 0, and as long as the email address exists in the contacts, I'm updating my counter, and I'm just going to add this counter to the email, and then once I end up getting out of this loop, I know that I have a unique email address, which again, if I had a database application, I'd be forcing this to happen. So if I start this, let me actually move the browser over here. Okay. So if I start this and I go to contact, I'm going to now have random values. Again, I'm not doing anything with vowels or consonants, but that's something we could do that later on down the line. I felt I just wasted way too much time just trying to generate these random values. So the next thing that I want to do is actually want to found out a way to fix the menu, and this was something someone had told me this a while back, that a line break actually takes up space, and that's what's screwing me up here. And the fix for this is to do a div instead of a line break, right? And basically clear all your floats and set a height of 0 pixels. And if I end up going back here, that looks a lot better. Again, I might want to put some padding in here as well. So the next thing that we're going to do is, I also want to fix the menu so that if I click on home, that's going to be selected. And that's actually not too difficult to fix. What you can do here is I'm going to put in an expression. And what I'm really looking at here, if I look at this at the layout, instead of making this selected, I'm going to make this dependent upon what the controller is. So if the controller is home, what I'm going to want to do is have this selected, because this is basically my home controller. If my controller is contact, I'm going to have that second tab selected. The way that I'm going to do that is, one of the things that you can do, I mean, really what's going on here is you need to get the controller value. So how do you end up getting the controller value? Let me break this up a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see here. So we've got these two list items. Okay, so what you can do is that there's actually a property called view context, and you could get, information about the route values and that sort of thing. But one of the things you could get is you could get the current controller, and you could get its type, and you could get its name. So if it's home controller, I'm going to add class as selected. And on the same token, I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it over here. And I'll do the same thing just to move this down to the next line. And what I can do here is that if this is contact controller, then that's going to be selected. Okay, so if I go back to my view over here, home is going to select home, and contact is going to select contacts. That looks pretty good. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start thinking about my list model. Now, what I want to do is I want to have a list of, it's a little bit different than what we did in class. I want to have a list of all the letters on the top of the page. The only links that I want to have active are the ones where, the letters actually exist for that prefix. So the way that we're defining the prefix for a contact is, we're looking at, if I have a contact, I've got this property called prefix, which is, I'm using the last name. So last name, I think in our other examples I did the first name, but I'm going to say the prefix for this user is going to be the last name dot substring 01 to uppercase. So what I want to get here is I want to get a list of letters. A letter should only be clickable if there are actually contacts, who have last names beginning with that letter. So that's one thing that I need to do. The other thing that I want to do is that if I end up going to that prefix, I want to make sure that that letter is actually selected. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to create this view model. All right, and just sort of thinking about the view model, the things that I really need to have in the view model are a list of all the letters that I could loop over. What I need to have after that, and I'm going to use this a couple of different ways, but what I want to have is I want to have a dictionary. So dictionary is made up of keys and values. And in my dictionary, each key is going to be the the prefixes that are in the list of all the contacts. So, if there was, if the all the contacts in the database, if there was only last names that began with the letter C and D, your dictionary would only have two keys, C and D, and the other value that I want to put in the dictionary, the number of contacts. So, if we had 100 contacts and 10 started, had last names starting with the letter D, 90 had last names that were starting with the letter E, I would have a dictionary of D and E, and D would have a value of 10, and E would have a value of 90, right? Now, it's going to be very easy to create that. I also have to have a list of contacts that are currently being displayed. I also have to have the current prefix, right, of what I'm searching on. And I'm also just going to put a couple of methods in there that are going to make my life a little bit easier. And this is something that is, I think, pretty useful to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a view model. And I'm going to call this a list view model. And let me go ahead and create it. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say add class, and I'm going to call this list view model. And let me go ahead and I'm going to copy and paste this here. So some of these things I'm going to have to go and calculate. Here I've got a wrapping problem. There might be an easier way to do this, but I'm basically just getting the alphabet here. So this prefix count is going to be a dictionary. Again, if every user in our collection had a last name beginning with B, this would be a dictionary with one key, which would be B, and the value would be however many users that they have. And again, I'm going to show you a really easy way to do that. This is really going to be the easy part. I also want to have a list of contacts. I want to know the current prefix that I'm looking at, and these are just some helpful methods. So what I want to do is if I'm looping over all my letters to create my links, I want to know if that letter is live. In other words, if it should be a link, if there are users with that last name starting with that letter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my dictionary, prefix count. I'm going to see if the key, because if the key won't be in there if the users, there are no users starting with that name. So starting with that letter. So if the keys contain the letter that I'm going to send in here, right, I'm going to return true. The other thing I need to know is if my letter is selected, right? And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say if my prefix is the same as the letter, it's going to be selected. And I'm going to do a little change, some changes to my style sheet to get that working as well. So one thing that I want to do here is I want to really quickly modify my global file. This is something we looked at, and I think I found just a little bit of a easier way to do this here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a route here. I'm going to call this, let's see, contact prefix, let's say. We could call this route name whatever we want. And what I'm going to do here is that, very simply, I'm going to say contact, and I'm going to say page prefix. Okay, so if I have a link that is that looks like this, contact/page with something after it, this is going to end up getting sent to whatever the controller is. Now, I don't want the home controller here. What I want is the contact controller. I want the index action, and I actually want to always have a value for prefix. So I'm going to say this is the default values. I'm going to say prefix equals A. Now, one of the things that you'll see here is that if I do this, just building this, if I, hold on, let's see what this error is here. So I think I have maybe a line break where I shouldn't have it. Hold on. Here's my route. Okay, maybe I just didn't have a semicolon. Let's see if that does it. No. Still looking at something else. sure what I'm missing. Let's try this again. Oh, I'm sorry, this is another model. So in list view model, I think when I copied and pasted, I forgot a brace. Sorry about that. So I'm going to build this. And again, I'm going to save this up at the end, as well. Okay, so once I end up doing that, I should be able to go here and if I go and click on contact, it's going to say contact page A because I've said that this is going to be a list, right? I'm basically saying this is the, if I look at the layout, I'm saying this is contact, it's using the index method, and it goes and figures out that it needs to it has default value for prefix, so it ends up putting it in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go in and start creating my view for this. And what I'm going to do here is start modifying my view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my index, right, and I'm going to change this to list view model. Right, so now I've changed my index. I'm going to use list view model. And if I'm going to use list view model, now my model is not just a list of contacts. My model is going to be this view model, which has a list of contacts. So all this will work exactly the same. And again, assuming that we end up getting the map and getting the letters, then what I can do over here is to say, let's put the menu over here. Okay, this is going to be the menu of all the letters, and I'm going to say for each VAR letter in model dot letters. Okay, and then what I'm going to do here is just have a say, hey, look, if I want to know if the link should be, if it should be a link, if there are actually users with this particular letter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if model letter is live letter, and fix that, and then I'm going to do list item, right? So I'm going to put a link here eventually. Otherwise, I'm going to put a list item, and I'm just going to put in the letter. So what is this link going to look like? It's pretty easy to do. It's just going to be HTML action link. The text is going to be letter. The action is going to be index. So I'm using index instead of list, which I had done in class. The round values are going to be just prefix. Not good. Hold on. Alright. So that should work. That should end up giving me the link that I'm looking for. And the other thing that I'm going to do here is that to find out whether or not this is selected, I'm going to say if say model dot, this doesn't give me code completion here, which is a little bit annoying. So I'm going to actually, if I did it up here, it would actually allow me to do it. I'll say model dot letter is selected. Okay, I'm going to copy that here. Again, the razor is not perfect for this, but if I go in here, and I'm going to say model, letter is selected, letter, then class equals selected, and again, just make sure you don't put quotes around selected because it's going to end up doing it for you, and I think I have model letter is selected. I don't think I want to, I actually want to put this. Alright, it's ternary operator, string, So model letter is selected. I'm going to do class equals selected, or else string.empty. So the next thing we'll do is we're going to go and actually just take care of the controller. And that's a pretty easy thing to do. It would seem that it's kind of complicated, but it actually isn't. So I'm going to go to my my Solution Explorer. Let me find my contact controller. So what I'm going to do here, so this is a little bit interesting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use model binding here, and I'm going to say index view model. Okay, and again, it might not, it doesn't find it, and you know, sorry about that. I called it list view model. So one of the things that happens here is that if there are any properties that get passed, and the prefix will always get passed, this model will always get created. So I'm going to have a model, and it's just a question of populating the other properties. There are really two things that I need to populate. So once I have my model, and again, the model binding is important. I pass a parameter here. That parameter is a property, and I am going to be passing prefix all the time. I have to. I have a default value for it. So even if I didn't, you know, any link is going to have the A in it, and even if it didn't, it would end up using that default value and have a prefix, and it would end up, in essence, it would end up creating the model. If there are no properties that get passed, as far as I know, this is going to be a null value, and I'm going to have to check for a null value, but I don't have to do that because I know I'm always getting the prefix. So now what I could say is I could say model.contacts equals contact bus get contacts where c dot prefix equals model dot prefix. I've got the model, and now I could just say toList. Okay, that's going to give me my contacts. Now, the only thing that I need to do is I need to get my prefix count, which is that dictionary. And it's a very easy thing to do, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do grouping. This is the same thing that you would end up doing with SQL Server, where you could group things together. And in essence, what I'm going to do is I'm going to group based upon the prefix. The way to think about that is that you basically are going to have multiple buckets, and each bucket is going to have a key, which is going to be the prefix. And then what you have at that point is you have what would be a collection of groups. You know, each group is going to have a key. The key is going to be a prefix, and the group itself is going to be a collection of contacts. Now, I don't need the contacts. What I need is the count of the contacts. So it's not a lot of code, but it's pretty powerful. It takes a little bit of, I think, getting used to. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say get contacts, and I'm going to say, hey, group by what, okay? And what I'm going to group by is c.prefix. At this point, if you moused over this, you would see that this is a collection of groupings, right? Your key is going to be a string because you're grouping by prefix, okay? And your group itself is going to be a collection of contacts. And what I could do here is I could say, hey, look, what I want to do is it's very easy to say, hey, look, turn this into a dictionary, okay? And there are two things that you have to do if you turn it to a dictionary. You basically, you know, have to be able to take your groupings, right, and select your key and select what the value is for this dictionary. So for the key, I'm going to use again, you have to use a lambda expression here, and I'm going to say, hey, look, from my grouping, okay, grab the key, right? It knows that you've grouped by prefix, so it actually knows that the key is a string. And from my value, I'm going to say take the group, which is a list of contacts, right? Again, you could think about these as you know, buckets of contacts, each of them being separated by the prefix, which is the first letter in each of the contacts' last name. So again, if you had, you know, just contacts that started with A and B, you'd have two buckets. You'd have a key for A, a key for B, and within that bucket you'd have you know, a list of your A contacts, a list of your B contacts. So from this grouping, right, or this bucket, right, what I'm going to just grab is the count. And now I've got my dictionary. So this is should give me everything that I need. So I've got my prefix, I've got my contacts, I've got my prefix count, and keep my fingers crossed here. I'm already up to 25 minutes on this. And the only thing here, so this is actually this is, can't tell it's working, but it is working, right? You can see the last name of F, right? You can see the last name of X. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to reuse some code and just make a couple of quick modifications. I'm going to use my same menu that I had before. So now I've got this menu. The only thing, and this actually is the selected value. You can see it's, down a little bit here. One thing that I could do here is that I'm just going to go in. I'm going to make this class menu, so it uses the other menu. And I'm also just going to say letter menu. And I'm going to go to my CSS, and in essence, it's almost like using, I don't know, well, I wouldn't say inheritance with the style sheet, but I'm going to go down here and where I have LI selected for my menu. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to say LI, not menu, but letter menu. So now it could choose between either of these background colors. I'm going to change this to like a yellow. It could choose between either of these background colors. It might be that the last one will win, but one way I could ensure myself that this will take precedence. So if you have both classes here, and they're both specifying the background color, this one will end up winning. And if I go back here, right, this should work. The only thing that you want to do here is you probably want to go and one thing that's a little bit strange is that if it knows that the prefix is here, if you click on contact again, since the prefix is part of the route value and you haven't specified it for this link, it'll use it for this link. If you always wanted that link to go back to A, what you can do is just go to the layout and say this is going to be for contact, and you could be just a little bit more specific. Hold on, those are HTML attributes. So contact, action name, HTML attributes. Let me just see what the other overload is here. Okay, so I could say for the route values, I'm going to say new prefix equals A. Right, and for the HTML attributes, I don't have any here, so I'm going to say null. And I'm going to save this and build this and go back to here. And now this should take me back to A. So one of the things we're seeing is that this is, and I should probably put a line break here so this goes down to the next line. I'll do that in the next example. So let me save this up, and we'll do editing, details, deleting, and I promise we're going to end up getting to some Ajax.